while in the mother and baby unit, a doctor comes in and says, "Hey, we're really surprised by this, but when we were delivering your baby, we found cancer." And I was like, "What?" I was shocked. And then they said, "We did surgery to remove it, but you're going to need treatments." And a lot of people who found out later on felt really heartbroken for us that this is supposed to be the happiest time of your life. You have this miracle baby, enjoy your newborn, but ultimately what seemed like darkness was actually God's mercy and light shining through. There was a divine purpose in the timing and the diagnosis and everything. And within a couple weeks, we started intense integrative treatments, and by God's grace, we were able to kind of go in this healing cocoon.
Hello and welcome to the Strong by Design podcast. Thank you so much for joining us, ladies and gentlemen. Another great episode today. So excited to have our very special guest back on the show after 2.5 years. It's going to be a great conversation. I get to find out what her life has been like. She even has her own special guest, her husband, Matt, sitting with her. We have the very amazing Joanne Miller on the show. Joe Miller, who was hosting our show and guesting on our show back in 2022. And you're going to find out all about her story in the last 2.5 years, what has been going on as she re-enters the Strong by Design podcast realm. And it's going to be very exciting to get her back in the fold as a regular guest and host of our podcast. I'd like to say thank you to all of our return listeners. I know there's hundreds of you that come back on a weekly basis and are supporting the show and listening and sharing with friends and family. And we are so grateful and thankful for you. We try to be, pretty, we have so many different hosts who have their own areas of expertise, like Joe, like Jared, like Tanya, myself, and Mike. And so it really helps us to cover all of these different areas of living a life strong by design, the body, the mind, the spirit. So I like to think that we're very complementary, and we try to be very much inclusive with all the different topics that we like to cover. I think we're going to cover all the body, mind, and spirit today in our conversation with Joe. So, but I encourage any new listeners or listeners who've been, part of the Strong by Design family for the last several months, go back and listen to some of our older episodes because there's some really good ones in there. Even if you go back to like episode 50 or episode 100 or anywhere between. I mean, we're getting close to 400 now. So, I mean, there's so much good evergreen stuff that you can go back and we've had a lot of guests that we love back on the show. We love our return guests. So we'll continue to do that coming up into the new year, into 2025, which is right around the corner. So we're just so encouraged and grateful for all of you. And so with that being said, the very amazing and incredible and just so delighted to have Joe back in the fold. And so thank you for making time and for being a guest on the Strong by Design podcast today, Joe.
Thank you so much for having me. I have been so excited. I am amazed I was able to sleep last night. I took a little extra sleep supplements. I need to run that by my healing team. So forgive me if I'm slurring a little from extra melatonin.
No, I haven't caught any slurring yet, so I think we're in good shape.
All right.
But this is great. And then Matt, you've been on the show before as well. So it was important to Joe to have you help tell this story a little bit, I think. So thank you for being her co-pilot on today's episode.
For sure. Glad to be here and definitely help to give the news that we're talking about at first and discuss some of the things that have been going on.
I figured also you would say no if I asked to come back. So using Matt as the carrot, Superman, then you'd say yes. I mean, you thought you got rid of me, but no. Sorry.
Yeah, well, I mean that's what you get with a guy who's an organ donor, right? He's a very giving type of person, which is I mean, you can't do better in the giving department than that. So he's he gets high marks in my world for sure. So, in a nutshell, give us the overview of the last 2.5 years. First, for any of our past listeners who are probably wondering, like, where is Jo? Why isn't she, hosting? Or where she hasn't been on the show for so long? And anyone who's new, who's going to go back now and certainly listen to some of your past episodes, which before we get to the end of this one, I'll remind people of some of the shows that you were on a couple years back. But what was the departure for? And what does the last 2.5 years look like?
In a nutshell, that's going to be interesting. I'll give it a try.
It's a big nutshell.
Yes. How much time do we have? Right before our last chat, we were waiting for our miracle baby to come. Jess was the miracle baby the doctors said we would never have after many years of unexplained infertility. When we got the news we were expecting, honestly, I was more shocked than Mary was when she found out she was having Jesus. I was like, how is this happening? Absolutely incredible. We were so excited. We prayed for more love in our life, and God answered that prayer with a miracle baby, and we were scheduled for an induction. I don't know if I shared this before, but we were scheduled for an induction because of my age. Having a baby at 40, they said, was a geriatric pregnancy, which I thought was hilarious. And on the baby registry, they were suggesting that we get a walker to go with the stroller. No, not really. We went in for this.
Not for you, Jo. You could do a handstand probably to go give birth. So
actually, I was doing a handstand in the bed, but we were scheduled for the induction. They said, take these pills. In a few hours, take some more pills. And by tomorrow, maybe the labor will start. It's going to be a long process. So go to sleep. I took the pills, and within 30 minutes, grueling labor started. My case was really unusual. I'm abnormal. And they said they were the strongest, longest contractions they had ever seen from anybody. I wasn't sure if I should say thank you or is something wrong. And Matt was incredible. He really went through the whole process like he was also delivering.
Although I have to say, the only thing that hurt on me was my hand when she was gripping it. But
I bet.
I think I broke some bones. But we went through this 33-hour grueling labor, pushed for more than 5 hours. We had a doula, and doulas are amazing. We learned a lot, and they said if you had one, you reduce your risk of a C-section by 70%. I prayed every day to not need a C-section, but ultimately what's best for the baby, I will do. But after 33 hours, they said she's stuck. We can see her head, but she's stuck in your pelvis. You need this emergency surgery. So Matt and I, we prayed and then released it to God. We went into surgery. Next thing you know, she's in my arms. Beautiful baby. She looked like she came out wearing makeup, just stunning. And the doctors and nurses were fawning all over her. Then they wheeled me away. I was so out of it. I didn't know what happened after that. And then fast forward, we're in the mother and baby unit, just enjoying our miracle baby girl. And while in the mother and baby unit, a doctor comes in and says, hey, we're really surprised by this, but when we were delivering your baby, we found cancer. And I was like, what? I was shocked. And then they said, we did surgery to remove it, but you're going to need treatments. And a lot of people who found out later on felt really heartbroken for us that this is supposed to be the happiest time of your life. You have this miracle baby, enjoy your newborn, but ultimately what seemed like darkness was actually God's mercy and light shining through. There was a divine purpose in the timing and the diagnosis and everything. And within a couple weeks, we started intense integrative treatments, and by God's grace, we were able to kind of go in this healing cocoon. And that's where I said I needed to step away because I felt like I needed to give 1,000% in my healing of my mind, body, and soul. And people considered me the healthiest person they had ever known. So we were all surprised. But then as I started working with the Avengers of holistic healing, we discovered together there were a lot of holes and there was a lot of healing that was needed. And I believe that God answered our prayer. You want more love in your life? I'm going to send it with a baby. But not only did we get more love by giving love to a baby, but then the diagnosis, I learned that Matt loved me even more than I could even think possible. And then loving a baby was so healing for cancer. And she also fostered a lot of other healing. One of my favorite verses that I say aloud every day, it's my declaration, Jeremiah 30, verse 17. He says, I will restore you to health and heal all your wounds. And at first I thought restoring to health is cancer-free. But then what's all the wounds? And I realized there were a lot of wounds, a lot of trauma that I still needed to address, a lot of things to heal. And then I felt really motivated as a new mom to be an example to my daughter of strong faith and love. And in order for her to learn the things that I prayed for her to have, the two of us needed to exhibit that. And I believe that the diagnosis allowed for more growth that I've had in the last 2.5 years than the 40 years prior combined.
Wow. Unbelievable. Yeah. I when you said that, having a geriatric pregnancy, which, people hear the word geriatric, they immediately go to like somebody in their 70s or 80s, but, women's bodies are designed to have babies when they're, technically in their teenage and years and 20s. I mean, that's right. They become fruitful in their early teens. Not that that's recommended, obviously, but, that's just kind of the way Mother Nature and the way God made us. But to have my wife's, our first child, she had at 35, and that was a good pregnancy. It went very smoothly. But she ended up needing emergency surgery. My son came 5 weeks early.
Oh, wow.
And then we had my daughter 3.5 years later, and so she's pushing 39, and that pregnancy looked far different and was much harder on her.
Really?
And which is what prevented us from having a third kid, because we kind of got a late start as it was, and then it was kind of off limits for us because of how hard the second pregnancy was. So I can imagine for you, the body's just different then, right? Mm-hmm. It's just different. Things are a little bit more rigid, if you will, and kind of, the body's more pliable when we're younger on purpose. The hips are more forgiving, and just like little kids' bodies are like basically rubber balls until they get older. It's on purpose. So when they fall, they actually aren't getting hurt as much, But what an unbelievable experience there for you as a first-time mom, and then this dynamic of the happiest day of your life, other than marrying your husband, having your child, but also finding out about this diagnosis. And then, so what's that treatment? What was the length of your treatment after that? How many months did you have to endure treatments and tests to verify that it was no longer in your system?
The conventional component was a 6-month process, but then it continues on with monthly labs, and then eventually it's every 3 months and then 6 months. So it's going to be a many-year process, but by God's grace, cancer-free very, very quickly. Actually, when we did our first conventional treatment, then we went and got a second opinion, and the doctors were saying, wow, what is happening? You are responding extremely well to treatment. You don't need as high of a dose. And some of the doctors were saying, maybe we reduce your length of treatment or how many rounds you do. This is incredible. And they said, we don't typically see a response like this. And so I started sharing that we were unbelievably blessed, again, by Believe Big. Believe Big is such an incredible organization that helps cancer patients navigate the journey using the integrative approach. And they had already helped me so much with my super twin and my mom and countless other loved ones. And just when I thought they couldn't possibly outdo themselves, they did, because they were the first phone call that we made. We actually hadn't shared it with any family. We spoke with Believe Big first, because that's right away, we're like, we need to talk to them. And they bent over backwards to support us and get us connected to the best team possible. I mean, I just wish that everybody had access to what we had access to, and the clinics that we were able to go to, and the countless protocols that were incredibly helpful. And then sometime later did a lot of emotional healing and trauma work that was just life-changing, unbelievably transformative, healing in so many other ways. And so I continue on with my holistic treatments to be as healthy as possible, mind, body, spirit, and to also recover from the harshness of treatments, multiple invasive surgeries, and all of that.
Wow. So Matt, what's your mind doing in this moment of having a baby, finding out about your wife's health, and being a first-time dad, right? For what's these first 6 months? You're scared as a new parent for this first 6 months. Certainly the first 3, because you're like, oh, I have to go home with this little thing and keep it alive, right? But with this added pressure of your wife's health. So what are those moments like for you?
You're right. There's a lot of scary moments in all of that. And even in the hospital, Joe had the C-section, and they had to keep her to remove her ovaries, and that was kind of part of the beginning of that process. And so she was in surgery still while I was trying to figure out how to feed this little creature. And even then, the mind is just running through scenarios and what's going on. And again, we have had a couple of different situations where we've dealt with family members and cancer diagnosis, and we didn't know for a few days. It wasn't confirmed while we were still in the hospital. We were there, and we tried to make sure, because Joe had that surgery and then she had another surgery a few months later, and so I was trying to make sure that she could rest as much as possible. And she did start treatments right away. So obviously that takes a lot out of you as well. Yeah. And I mean, I don't share this a lot, but I'll share in the middle of the night. Sometimes I'm laying there in the room with Jess, and again, new dad, baby noises. You're up all through the night. You just, every gurgle, you're afraid already. And then I'd take her and I'd be feeding her, and you can't help but wonder in the middle of the night, like, what's going to happen, right? What's going to be 6 months, a year, 2 years down the road? We don't know where we're going. Right. And at the same time, you sit there in the middle of the night holding this little baby, feeding her, not knowing what's going on, and you're praying. There's a lot of prayers in the middle of the night, all the time, and just thinking, God will take care of us. And because of what we went through before, and what especially Jess, Joe's super twin, we were able to hit the ground running in a way that most people wouldn't have been able to. Right. Joe talks about how much the treatments were affecting her positively. Like she was clearing up very, very quickly, and a lot of that, I attribute that response to the fact that she was able to jump right in, and she was doing things that you don't hear people say, like fasting during chemo treatments. Like, that's not something that you normally do, but it really, really impacted her positively. So a lot of prayer, definitely fears, and just kind of like praying through that, and doing the best we can for the little one and for Joe at the same time.
Yeah. The power of prayer really is something, isn't it? You know what, and I get it. You know, I mean, I would imagine that a lot of the people that follow our show are believers in God and Jesus. But if they're not, then you know, it's having faith in something bigger than us, in our Creator. Because it makes a lot more sense to me that we are by design, just like our show, that we are created very special, very different, and that that we owe an immense amount of gratitude that we can't pay back to our Creator. And the only way to connect is in prayer. You know, in those tough times and in the good times, we have a tendency to ask for things when we're downtrodden or in difficulty, but sometimes people forget to praise and for all the blessings in our life, which is typically how I start my prayer, is in gratitude, because of all the amazing blessings that I take for granted daily, and I know most of us do, especially if you live in the good old U.S. of A., where we're you know, so blessed just to be in this country for so many reasons. But thank you for sharing that, Matt. I mean, I remember those moments as a new dad, and I mean, we had a premature baby who was spent 2 weeks in the NICU and had bacterial pneumonia, and
wow.
and just I remember those first few weeks before he came home, and just going back, you know, back and forth from the hospital to home. My wife stayed in the hospital the whole time, and I would go back home and be like, "What is going on? You know, this is crazy. This is not what having a new baby is supposed to be like." You know, seeing your baby in an incubator and not being able to really touch him and stuff for a few weeks, needing help to breathe and stuff, and you know, it's traumatic. But then you get home, and now it's fully your responsibility, and it's like, oh my gosh, I don't want to break anything. I just, it's, you know, you're trying to, but then the nurses would assure you, like, the babies are much tougher than you think. Like, you can, when you're changing the diaper, like, you're not going to pull a leg off. Don't worry.
Matt totally felt like that. He was so funny.
Yeah. They're just these precious little 6-8 pound things, you know, but they are tough. They're in a lot of ways indestructible. Look what they just went through, you know, but you mentioned, Joe, obviously Believe Big has been a huge part of your life for years now. And your friend there, that you can certainly give her some love, she has guests regularly on her show, and they talk about what the guest's favorite health tip is. So this being a fitness and health podcast, what's your number one health tip? And I know you have many, because you are a super fit superwoman, but what would you like to share with our audience?
That's such a great question. And yes, I love that Evilise Page asks that on her podcast. And after 2.5 years and countless protocols and all of this, it all boils down to the biggest keystone habit that impacts everything. And I believe that it is to love God, love yourself, and love others. And I felt like after my super twin went to heaven, that my love for God increased exponentially. There was this closeness and bond that was incredibly beautiful at such a difficult time. And I found a lot of comfort in that, but I didn't realize that I wasn't loving myself. There were a lot of things that I did that weren't very loving, and things where it was kind of disguised. I thought, this is just humility, or I want to be selfless. This is a good thing. But then after working with the amazing Megan Van Zell at Cancer Peace University, and this a dear friend and therapist, Kit and Kaylee, who helped me through a trauma program, I discovered that as I dissected my thoughts, words, and actions, there were so many examples of me not loving myself. And when you love yourself, fear disappears. And Dr. Naisha Winters says that the antidote to fear is love. And she said, actually, with ovarian cancer, the number one thing you can do is increase oxytocin. And oxytocin is that love, connection, bonding hormone, and you get loads of it from a baby. And it's incredible that we prayed for more love, and God sent that with this miracle baby, but then taking care of her caused me to give love, which is something that I had missed. There was this big hole in my heart. And so giving love was incredibly healing. But then she was also loving me back, and it was releasing oxytocin. So that's where the timing of the diagnosis with a newborn was incredibly divine, because God knew, hey, I'm going to send this baby to help heal you. I'm going to heal you of cancer. But even more than that, bigger, I'm going to heal you of the lack of love that you show for yourself. I'm going to teach you how to love yourself well. And that is something that I want to be able to show Jess. I don't want her to rely on other people to show her love, that she can generate the love from within and know that we have the love of God, but we can also love ourselves.
Yeah, it's such a great message to our listeners. I mean, if people just took more time to love on themselves and give them a pat on the back and not be so critical, and we can be our worst enemies, and I'm guilty of it. That small voice in your head that's not God's voice, telling you can't do it, and you're not good enough, and you're a failure, and all of these things. And it's such a lesson, a good lesson to learn to do a better job of taking care of yourself in that regard, because when you can love yourself the right way, it makes other relationships so much better. And I love the sentiment that when your twin sister passed away, you were able to fill that void with God's love in a lot of regards, I think, right? Because that's a huge hole, and as you know, my older brothers are identical twins, and my brother Dave passed away. It's been 11 and a half years, and to brain cancer. And I know what kind of a hole that made for not just my life, but my other brother, his identical twin. It was like you lost part of yourself. It's a loss that no one can ever truly understand other than the other twin, because it's just such a unique bond and relationship. It's half of you that became another person. So it's just such a unique thing, and only God can fill that gap. It really, honestly. So your little one, Jess. If you had to describe her in a few sentences, what would that sound like? Both of you, please.
Well, she's definitely a bundle of joy, and we call her a firecracker because she has an insane amount of energy. Oh, yeah. We've had a number of sitters watch her or other kids play with her, and they will be sitting on the floor out of breath, and they'll say, oh, I can't keep up with her. She just go, 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 go. And
I wonder where she gets that from.
Joe, right. For sure.
Right.
She's amazing. She's adventurous. She was telling jokes at a year, little baby jokes. She tells little stories. She's always exploring. She really takes after her mommy. I'll come in the living room and they'll be doing yoga together on the floor.
Yeah.
She gets in. She works. She puts us through workouts already. She's a little trainer at 2 years and 4 months.
Wow.
And she does my healing routine with me, which is quite extensive.
Yeah.
And I wanted to show her how being healthy and your best self is fun. And we even started this thing on our YouTube channel called Healthy Kids Club. And we have this acronym called SAFE, and it's simple, achievable, fun, and effective. Because I feel like a lot of kids will think, oh, it's boring to eat healthy. It's boring to do exercise and all of that. But we try to show her that this is self-love. It's taking care of yourself. You're going to live your best life by doing these things. And we try to make it simple and fun. So Jess loves doing it. I do these cold plunges, and I get in a chest freezer. It's like 30 some degrees. She will stick her hands in it. I don't know if she's allowed to get in that. We need to work with a team that knows pediatrics, but she wants to stick her hands in. And then when I get in the mineral hot tub, she tries to put her hands in there, and she loves it. She's like, I want to do cold plunges.
And she eats paleo.
Paleo, organic.
She really does.
She will eat broccoli first on her plate and loves organic liver. So she's incredibly enthusiastic, joyful. We've been told she's the happiest baby and kid people have ever met.
Right. Well, again, it's rubbing off, I think, because you guys are typically, you guys exude kind of not just your love for each other, but just kind of your love for people. It just, I've never even been in the room with you, but I could tell, like, there'd be hugs, there would be a lot of high fives, there'd be a lot of, shoulder slaps and bro hugs and all that stuff, just because you guys kind of, that's the vibe that you give off. And so when the children are exposed to that, I like to think that our kids, not to say I'm perfect, I'm not. My wife might be closer to perfect than I am, but there's a lot of love in our home, and I like to feel like our kids both are like that, or perceived that way by others. Like, oh, they're very kind, or very, good nature. My daughter's just like me, super talkative, and she'll talk to a tree.
That's awesome.
We were talking the other day. I just got a new front door installed in my house. We had to go make a bunch of keys. You make a bunch of copies for everyone and your neighbors to have keys and, stuff like that. So that was our little thing to do last night together, is go get new keys made. And I had her manning the key machine, and she did it all. And, it's fun that we just had that moment together at Home Depot, and then we went over by where all the doors are, and we played in the doors and going in and out of the doors areas. She loves to play at Home Depot a little bit, but we were talking on the way home. I'm like, honey, you're just like Daddy. I'm like, you just talk. You'll talk to anything. You'll talk to a tree even. And she's like, I do talk to trees.
That's amazing. I love it.
Yeah, she was totally owned it, so it was pretty funny. But, they imitate us. Mm-hmm. And so your baby Jess is going to imitate your love for each other and your love for fitness and health. And so, it's going to be like a super, talk about she's going to be like, who's the Avenger? Captain Marvel. Oh. That's it. Your daughter's going to be like Captain Marvel. Like, she's going to be the most powerful superhero in the universe, So that's pretty cool. You said something earlier. We talked about self-love, and you've struggled with that, but you've overcome it, or at least you're in the process of still overcoming that. Someone listening right now, I'm certain, is struggling with it as well. What are some things that some action steps maybe you could give them to start working on that?
That's such a great question. I feel like the biggest thing for me was journaling, and then I talked with a great team of therapists. Like I mentioned, Megan Van Zell, she's brilliant, and I would journal my feelings, and I would also separately write a list of things that I enjoyed. There were so many times where I knew that I loved health and fitness, but there was a lot of other things in my life where I didn't know what truly brought me joy and fulfillment. And I would write it down. I would think about, what are the little things that lift my spirit? What makes me just smile and make my soul feel happy? So I thought a lot about what brought me joy. I actually started saying, good morning, Joe, I love you. I'd put my hand on my heart and close my eyes and do this technique that I learned from an author. I think it's Dr. Shauna White. Dr. Nasha Winters interviewed her, and she's this therapist who talks about how self-compassion and self-love is incredibly healing. When you love yourself and love others, you release chemicals that heal the body. But when you feel negative emotions, anger, bitter, resentment, guilt, it releases chemicals that create disease. And eventually it catches up. So I try to do meditations, loving kindness meditations, saying I love you to myself. I look in the mirror and say it. I feel really weird. Sometimes I've done this outside in the yard and I'm saying I love you to myself. I think the neighbors think I'm a narcissist. But
I love you, Joe. I love you too, Joe. It's like, oh my gosh, she has split personality.
Exactly. It's funny because in our cul-de-sac, we've had 3 neighbors in our small cul-de-sac move. I think it has to do with me talking to myself, saying I love you. I also speak up. I say to Matt, I'm like, I'm really sorry, but I need to do this for me. I'm really tired. Can I take a nap? Can you watch Jess so I can take a nap? That is something I never did before. Yeah. In the past, if I was tired, I would just take more caffeine. I would just tell myself to like shut up, grin and bear it, and go. And I would burn the candle at both ends. So while I was very healthy with a lot of my habits, the one thing that wasn't healthy was I wasn't getting enough sleep, and I would deny myself of things that I wanted. I would feel like if I made a mistake, I needed to be punished. Or Matt would try to give me a gift, and I might have been sensitive about something with him, and he was patient as a saint as usual, and I'd be like, I'm so sorry. Can you forgive me? It's a sensitive thing, but I realized I was wrong. I would say that, and he would be like, wow, you're the best wife ever. Thank you for saying sorry. I'm like, you're thanking me? This is what I should be doing. But I just started to speak up. So a lot of it was, I'd say if I needed rest, I would take rest when I felt it. If I felt tired or like I had to push myself, I stopped. Whereas that's something I never did before. I would work out so hard. I literally thought I was going to leave the planet that day because I was going to die. I didn't even know your heart rate could get as high as I had gotten it, and things that I would ignore with myself. I did not love myself the way that I loved others. So I started the loving kindness meditations. I started doing nice things for myself. I would get a massage. Even my healing routine is really extensive. And the old me would have felt guilty. But I'd say to Matt, this is the most loving thing I can do for myself. But it's also going to love Matt and Jess for me to be healthy. And so sometimes I'll say, I don't feel like I'm in a good headspace. Can I step outside and meditate or pray, do my gratitude journal? And I speak up a lot now. And now I'm starting to see maybe a little too much. I have to make sure that I'm not saying I, but rather we. How can we as a team, so I don't run Matt over or run him into the ground?
Can I throw a note in there? So
Please.
Joe mentioned letting go of or that she would have previously felt guilty, and I have to say you can do some of those things and do them while feeling guilty and kind of offset it. But if you can let go of that guilt and say this really is a good thing for me, then I feel like it's extra impactful. So the fact that she's been able to let go of that guilty feeling and do the things that are best for her health has been huge.
Well,
Especially for women too. I think it's harder as the caretakers, typically of the family and the nurturers. I know my mother, God rest her soul. I lost my mother. It's been 8 years, and she was a server in the restaurant business her whole life, and then she raised 3 boys, and she was non-judgmental and just. She wouldn't sit down to even eat the meal because all she was worried about was preparing the meal and making sure everyone had enough to eat, and then I'll start cleaning up. It's like, Mom, would you just sit down and eat with us? Even if I know it's hard for you because you're thinking about what's next and getting dessert ready, and it's just in your nature as women. I feel like you're built differently, and there's this like internal thing that's like. You must care for others. You must take care of them.
Yes.
You must ask them. You must take action now. And I know it was very strong for my mom. and obviously for you. But in order for you to be better and stronger for him and for your daughter, you need to do things for yourself without feeling guilt or that you're being selfish. It's like, if you want a good long life with your husband and your child, you have to take care of your own health, and that's number one.
Yeah, I started to talk to myself the way that I would talk to a best friend.
Right.
How would I talk to them? What would I say to them? I would never say the things to them that I have internally felt, and I felt like it was really disguised. I didn't know that I was doing these things. But then as you dissect why you do what you do, you start discovering, wow, there's some issues here. There's a lack of self-love, and there's actually a personality type that gets diagnosed with cancer more than any other type, and it's type C. There's the type A personality, B, and C. And I thought that I was kind of A, B. In some ways, really laid back. People were like, you could care a little more. And then other ways, it was like, whoa, you are type AAA, you care way too much. Like David Goggins going all out, I'm taking souls kind of personality. But I realized I had elements of those, but a lot of type C, which is you deny your needs, you don't speak up, you put yourself last or not at all, and you don't do nice things for yourself, and you don't share your opinions. And I realized that I was doing all of those things, and I did start doing affirmations or saying affirmations, positive affirmations and loving declarations to myself. I say it, and I do a lot of visualizing. When I'm in the chest freezer doing my cold plunge, I'll do breath work, and I'm visualizing loving myself and saying I am worthy, because I realized after working with Megan and redesigning childhood memories that there were a lot of inner decisions that were made as a child because of how I was raised and grown up. Not blaming anybody, but those hard messages, I later on learned to believe that I was not worthy of love. I wasn't worthy of good things, and that I had to always earn it, or if I did something wrong, I needed to pay for it. There had to be a punishment to offset it. But then I'm so grateful that God used the diagnosis to heal me of that. I'm still a work in progress, but 1,000,000,000 times better. Do you feel like I'm more tolerable? No. He laughs. That's it. What? Okay.
More tolerable?
Can you cut that? I don't want that in the interview. No.
What a way to ask the question.
Yeah, can you handle what Joe's putting out these days?
She's amazing. I mean, like it warms my heart to hear her focusing on herself in that way, and to be able to say things like that she loves herself, because I know that her inner monologue has not been like that in the past. Right. And so to feel that changing, to hear that changing, and to know that she's changing that, and giving that new verbiage to our daughter, which is you are powerful, you are loved, you are strong, you are capable, you are able to do great things. Like, it's fantastic.
Yeah, Jess says love heals too. When she falls down and she gets a cut, we always say, I'm sorry. We validate the emotion, because I used to suppress emotions and no, I'm fine. Put dirt on it. But now it's, yeah, that seems like it would really hurt. And then we validate and we say, you're really tough and strong. How can we help you? And then we also say, love heals. And we give her a hug and we give her a kiss. And now she says love heals, because they've actually done studies where they literally would take a knife and cut somebody, and then they would expose them to a loving situation. And then they would test how long it took them to heal from the wound. Then they would cut them again and expose them to an upsetting situation. Maybe they were watching the news.
An upsetting situation like being cut?
Oh, there is that. But add on to that, and then they would be exposed to the news, and then they would time the healing. And the people that were exposed to love, and they also included laughter, basically the oxytocin type feelings, they healed exponentially faster.
Wow. Yeah, the body, the cells probably perform a little bit better when you're giving them the right reaction and response. And it all starts up here. It all starts up in the head, and the inner voice, the words that we use to talk to ourselves about things, and it's so important. I think of the Bible, the two becoming one flesh. When you're talking about, it's two people do come together and complement each other and kind of complete each other, as you do in marriage. But we also have to find wholeness in ourselves, aside from, or where are we finding our identity? We're not finding our identity in our spouse. We're finding our identity in God, hopefully, and in something that's bigger than us. But when those two things are happening simultaneously, like the two becoming one flesh and both people being moving in the same direction, that's where it really becomes so much more powerful as a connection and relationship and a bond. It's pretty cool. So you've been reading a few books. You said you threw out a number of like 150. Now, I'm not challenging you on that. That is an insane number of books to have read in the last couple of years.
Yeah.
But there was one book in particular that kind of made your top list of favorite books over the course of the last couple of years. And there's a favorite quote that you have. What is that?
That's a great question. Just to put it out there, I was only able to read those books because of Audible. God bless you, Audible. And Matt teases me all the time because I actually listen to books at a really fast speed. You want to share?
You don't go to like 2.0 speed, do you? You go.
I go even higher.
That.
Somehow
Higher than
I can.
two?
Yes, I've noticed that since switching my nutrition to therapeutic ketogenic, my brain actually works on hyperdrive. It's so fast. I don't mean that in a bragging way. In some ways, I need to slow it down, but I actually can hear things at a much quicker rate.
When I listen to what she's listening to, I walk into a room where she has an audiobook going. To me, it's just that's all I hear, and she's listening to it.
Is it like the Chipmunks?
Oh, totally.
It's even more than the Chipmunks.
Really?
It's just it's like just sped together. Like there's no spaces, there's no breath, there's no like I can't make heads or tails of it. But she's listening to it.
Have you ever heard her say this? Hey, honey, I'm on my 5th podcast of the day, and I've already crushed 2 books. Has she ever said that?
I have not heard that yet. But
I've been thinking it, though, because I do listen to a ton of podcasts, and even more over the last 2.5 years. And, of course, Strong by Design, a favorite. But that's so funny.
We've actually talked at certain points, because she does listen to so many podcasts as well. And sometimes at night, I'm like, do you want to just like listen to a book for recreation?
Although it is my recreation. I love learning. That's one of my healing tools. When I learn something, I get this huge dopamine hit. I could feel like really down in the pit, and sometimes I'm like, okay, what could I do? I've prayed, I did my gratitude journal, I meditated, got some outside time, exercise, but I might still feel stuck, and then I'm like, I'm going to pull up a podcast. I know that if I learn something, I'll feel better. And it works 99% of the time.
Yeah. Wow.
So that's just explain all the books in case people are like, liar!
I believe it. I have like 5 books that are in motion right now on my desk that are like I pick through. But I've used Audible for so many books over the years because driving to work, if I'm not listening to a podcast or like really good music, I love listening to it, getting into a book, and it makes the drive so much more pleasurable. And it does help you get through it very quickly. So what's this quote?
Yes.
What's this magical quote of yours?
Thanks for reeling me back in.
Yeah.
This is from Dr. Bernie Siegel. He's incredible. I would say my favorite anti-cancer book is The Metabolic Approach to Cancer from Dr. Nasha Winters. Can't recommend it enough. But then the other book that really helped with love and healing and my mindset was Love, Medicine, and Miracles by Dr. Bernie Siegel. And he would work with patients and teach them how to tune into their own needs, to speak up, to love themselves. And this quote is just phenomenal. Matt was kind enough to print it so that I would remember it and say it correctly. But he says, whatever question appears, love is the answer. If you could love enough, you would be the most powerful individual that you have ever met. There is nothing that enough love cannot conquer. There is nothing that enough love cannot heal.
Powerful. It's good.
So
Good.
powerful.
I like it.
That helps me fall asleep sometimes at night when the gears get going and the brain wants to go into solution mode. I'll read this or say it, meditate on it, and it's something that helped me a lot during the incredibly difficult and dark times of the hardest parts of the treatments. That was really helpful and helped me overcome fear. One of my favorite verses is perfect love casts out fear. And so I think about the love of God and how when you think about love, you can't be afraid at the same time. And when you feel fearful, healing stops and it weakens the immune system. But when you feel loving, it boosts your immune system. And so this is definitely a go-to for me.
Yeah. And I'm sure in some ways too, obviously there's the love that you guys had for each other prior to having Jess, but then there's this whole new love that you've found together in loving each other and your child. And it's just, love is a very interesting thing. Like when parents, I'm sure, always get this question of, if they have multiple kids, like, who do you love more? Or, who, and it's like, well, it doesn't quite work that way. While some parents will, if they're being honest, might say that they do truly have favorite kids. I think your capacity for love just gets bigger.
Yes.
Like if you have 5 kids, it's just like, I just love, my capacity for love has just expanded because I have grown my family. And I feel like that it extends beyond that too. I think your capacity for loving your neighbors or for loving your coworkers, for loving your family, for loving your spouse, for loving just people in your life, grows if it's something that's important to you, if it's something that you pray about, if it's something, love always feels better than the alternative. Doesn't mean that it's easier.
Right.
It just feels better than the alternative and is usually the right path.
Yes, I love what you said. It actually reminds me of something that my Aunt Catherine said to me as a child. I remember feeling a little jealous over another cousin being around and, am I not the favorite? My twin and I, are we not the favorites? And is there enough love to go around? Because I felt like it was something that was scarce. And she said that love was limitless. And she said the same thing. Love grows. And do you remember that Bill Cosby commercial about friends are like Jell-O? There's always more room for Jell-O.
Right. Back in the 80s, probably, right?
I'm dating myself.
90s,
Yes. But always room for more, and love increases. And I didn't think it was humanly possible to love Matt anymore or appreciate him anymore. But then when he became a dad, I'm like, whoa, it just exploded. Seeing him being so loving and tender to Jess, and he literally lays down his life every day for me. And when we're out places and we're talking to moms and they talk about, I'm so exhausted getting up in the night with the baby, and I can't relate to them. Matt's the one that's like, I know, right? She got up like 3 or 4 times and I changed her because when I was diagnosed, Matt said, you need your sleep.
Yeah.
So from the beginning, he did the overnights so that I could sleep all through the night and hit my goal of 8 to 10 hours of sleep a day. And that's only possible because of him. And he did that while juggling work, and he would just be incredibly exhausted, like bone crushing tired, and yet still doing that. And even when he was so tired, like just dragging, he'd say, "Do you need me to help make your food for you?" And just constantly serving. But I look forward to this next year of balancing things out and showing him the love that he has shown me.
He truly is Matt Superman Miller.
Yes.
For sure. And I did want to, I do have a few more things I want to touch on with you guys. But for people listening, if you go back some of your past episodes, I think the first one that we did with you, Joe, was February 23rd of 2022. It was episode 217, An Unbreakable Bond for Life. And that was featuring you and your story, talking about your twin sister. And then some weeks later, we did one where we were talking about your traumatic accident, if you recall. That was episode 222, Still Standing, Surviving a Traumatic Accident. Pretty amazing episode there. I remember that conversation. And then we had episode 228, Never Defeated. It's about the size of the fight inside, and that was the two of you together. And then several weeks later, we had an episode featuring Matt, which was, I think, you interviewing him. If I'm not mistaken. And Would You Do This for Someone You Love, featuring Matt Superman Miller, episode 232. So for those listening, go back, listen to those. You get to know a bit more about Joe and Matt, who were on the show quite a bit back then, the first half of 2022. So getting back to where we were, you're obviously people who are seeing you, if they're watching on YouTube and listening to this on YouTube. If not, they can go onto your social and see pics of you. You've been obviously super fit. You've been a competitor in the powerlifting, strong man, strong woman community for quite a while. What are you currently doing to stay super fit? Like, what's a typical workout week look like now for Joe Miller?
You mean besides chasing a toddler and?
Yeah, besides mommy duties.
Yes, that's right. Wow, she is so active. Really, I want to track my steps because I probably get at least 20,000 steps a day just chasing her.
Yeah.
But we revamped my routine after working with the Reardon Clinic and Dr. Nasha Winter, suggesting that I needed to cut back because my training had been so extensive. I was releasing too much cortisol, and cortisol was weakening my immune system. So we needed to find more of a sweet spot. And then after a grueling pregnancy, labor, and then multiple abdominal surgeries, and then chemo treatments, getting down to less than 80 pounds, losing all muscle, not all muscle, but a lot of muscle. Then I had to gradually build up, and now I'm at a place where I exercise every day for at least 60 minutes. They don't want me doing more than 90 minutes in a day because of the cortisol. And I lift weights 3 to 4 days a week, typically total body, but I mix it up. I listen a lot now to my body. And I do 2 to 3 days a week of high intensity interval training. And then I do cardio on the other days. We've got machines, Ski Erg, the Air Runner. We have the assault bike. We have a rower, things like that. And then I do some CrossFit, some strongman stuff. But again, just limiting the time. Before, I was working out 2 to 3 hours a day, 7 days a week. So now no more than an hour. And then a lot of walking. And then throughout the day, I'll do squats and push-ups and pull-ups and things like that. And then daily yoga and Qigong.
Yeah, those things are great. I'm still, after all these years of doing yoga, we do it here on Wednesday, a full hour plus session. I'm still awful at it, but I always feel great when it's done. That I'm proud of myself for doing it, and I can feel the benefits immediately. It's so good. And Qigong is, obviously a little bit different. Explain to somebody listening, they probably have an idea of yoga because of its popularity. Explain Qigong a little bit.
That's a great question. I'm actually going to hand that off to Matt because he is the martial arts black belt master who trained in the mountains in California with the Asian Yoda, and they did Tai Chi and Qigong. And can you share it the way you brilliantly do?
Well, I'll say this. So Qigong is a way of combining your breathing and your body movement to move energy within your body, and it helps to increase things like your healing, reduce stress. It can stimulate healing. It has a lot of really positive benefits, but at the end of the day, it's kind of merging movement with breath, and there's a lot more to it if you want to get deeper, but it's something that you can do 5 minutes a day and get a lot of really good benefits out of.
It looks similar to Tai Chi.
Kind of combining these really, really beneficial movement patterns in the body with the breath work, which has this kind of meditative oneness outcome to it, right? It's like you're really kind of still with yourself and like going. I don't know. It's really fascinating stuff. I mean, I've seen other people perform it. I've talked with some people who do it and are just swear by it, by its benefits. So
I love it. I thought I would never be able to do something like that because of the slower pace.
Right.
But it is so calming and healing and energizing.
Right.
Sorry, Jess is calling out for Matt.
That's 100%
Dad
understandable.
duty.
I get it. It's Superman needs to fly away and save something. So I get it. So now I also know, and you've alluded to it a few times, you have this massive daily health regimen that I think we're going to do a solo episode on what this thing looks like. I mean, you shared it with me. It was like, it looked like it was 78 different things. I was almost like, there's just no way, but it's you. So I realized, oh, there is a way. I could see Joe actually doing all of this in a matter of a day, but maybe highlight just some of the things that are for you, like non-negotiables in a given day, like from when you wake to when you sleep, just like, 5 to 10 practices.
Wow, I think my non-negotiable is potentially more than 10, but I'll share that. And it's something that I'm fine-tuning with the doctors, too, because they'll say to me, hey, we keep meeting, and somehow your list is getting longer. So I need to make sure I don't do that, go overboard, and fine-tune it. But daily, it's very critical that I read the Bible daily and write in my gratitude journal. I also daily get lots of sunlight. I'll do that first thing in the morning because that helps to lower melatonin and increase cortisol in a good way and wake you up. And it helps you to fall asleep faster at night and more deeply. So I do a lot for my sleep. I do a ton of breath work, 4-7-8 breath work and box breathing like Navy SEALs do. We do a lot of family snuggle time for the oxytocin and bonding. I do mistletoe injections, rebounding, vibration plate. I do earthing. I'm barefoot all the time. I look like a hippie. I hug a tree. After one of Believe Big's podcasts, one of the guests said she hugs trees. I was like, I'm doing that. And again, it explains why the neighbors are leaving. And
oh my goodness, that's great. That's what I want to get. I want to get testimonials from all of the former neighbors, just to find out.
Yes.
Why is it that you've left?
That would be amazing. Yes, and I do high dose IV vitamin C, high dose IV ozone therapy, and I have a ton of supplements, a big cart full of supplements, cold plunges, infrared sauna, dry brushing, laughing, forest bathing. I have a PMF mat for boosting the immune system. I do red light therapy. I do dry float therapy, halo salt therapy, intermittent fasting, monthly prolonged fasting.
Yeah.
anywhere from 3 days to 5 days of just water.
Wow. Yeah. And what's your water intake in a given day look like, Joe?
Wow, I probably drink 1.5 gallons a day.
Wow.
Of water, but I have to be careful that I don't lose a lot of electrolytes.
Yeah,
so
because you're not a large person either, so 1.5 gallons for most people, they'll never get there. Like a gallon, people would struggle to drink that much in a day, which is about 3 liters of water, right? Is a gallon. Yeah. But we all know the benefits of water, right?
Yes.
Without water, we don't survive. We can't survive 3 days without it. So that should be priority. And I love and a lot of things you've talked about, these are not expensive things to go outside and get sun.
Right.
To go outside and breathe fresh air.
Yes.
To drink more water, right? To laugh more. To be around and hug and people that you love, to sit next to somebody on the sofa or something and just hold hands or things like this that are so healing and that don't cost anything. They just, they need to be intentional.
Exactly. And fasting is free. That really is powerful. Never in a million years did I think I could fast. I barely could make it 2 hours without eating, but then the longest I did was 5.5 days, but usually 5-day water fast, just water. And God is good to help me, and it really just helped heal a lot. Fasting is free. And then also I did the therapeutic ketogenic, which I'm still doing, and I really enjoy that. And of course, a lot of emotional healing work. That is daily. The emotional component is the biggest piece of the healing puzzle, and that impacts everything else.
Wow. Yeah, we've had Dr. Annette Bosworth on our show several times, Dr. Boz. I would encourage you, Joe, if you haven't heard some of her episodes, she's
great.
Fascinating. Okay.
Yes.
She's an internal medicine doctor, and she's a huge advocate for fasting and for ketogenic and for its effects on us, its impact on us, especially with anything cancer related. But you starve cancer when you fast, and especially when you're not taking in sugar and stuff. So obviously that I think that was a huge component of you restoring health was like, if you're fasting, the cancer has nothing to survive on if you're not taking anything in. It's not going to live on water.
Yes, and your immune system reboots. And also just fasting is very spiritual too. I needed to pray like I've never prayed before, and just my relationship with God and my faith has increased exponentially since then. And so that is a good time to reflect a lot during the fasting time and rest. And we just have been really blessed to be able to try so many things.
Yeah, no doubt. How's Jess, Superman? She's fine?
She's good. She needed a little bit of help, and she needed a little daddy snuggle, but she's good for now.
See, good. Superman back at it.
That's good. I want to get you guys back to mommy daddy mode because I know it's a whole hour without the kid kind of just kind of doing their own thing. That can be tough. An hour for a kid might as well just be a full day.
Yes,
that's true. That's true.
What I mean? But that's good. I appreciate you both, being able to share so much about what you've endured the last couple years and what that looks like, and to give people hope who are maybe in some of those moments right now. And it's there's the light at the end of the tunnel feels so far off, but to find the blessings in your life, and to have love for yourself and faith in others and faith in yourself to get through it is so huge. Even though it can feel so very challenging. So it's great. Joe, where can our listeners follow your story a little bit more, or see updates, or get to know you better? Where are some places that you would like them to go?
We're on Facebook. So I've got my Joe Mills Miller account, but then there's Miller Time Fitness, Facebook and Instagram. We also have a Miller Time Fitness YouTube channel.
Livefit.net has some articles, and we'll link you over to the channel.
Oh, great. Well, I'll make sure I share some of those links in the show description so that any of our listeners can go and find more of you guys and what you're doing, and see some. I'm sure they could see some good old some of your old powerlifting competition pics and stuff are so inspiring and so cool. I remember talking with you obviously about some of those things, some of your big lifts, and it's so impressive. Some of the stuff, for all of our fitness enthusiasts, strong men, competitors, powerlifters. You were quite mighty for what was your best lift again? What your best lift was a deadlift?
Yeah, deadlift. Yeah, it was. That's it. I not in competition, but eventually got 315 pounds
at what weight?
114 pounds at the time.
So basically triple. You pulled triple your body weight.
It was incredible. I was really blessed though with Matt's support and Susie Hartwig Gary, unbelievably dear friend of mine and coach, and just some stubbornness. Now, loved it. But all that training, I think, helped me the most for motherhood. I needed to be strong and fit in my mind, body, spirit to be the best mom possible. So I think that all parents need to go through some boot camp training beforehand. It's no joke, as you know.
Yes, no doubt. I encourage anyone to participate in something like that makes you a little scared, that challenges you, right? As long as it's done safely, obviously, with your health in check, your health in mind. Those environments are so inspiring, and to be surrounded, like Brian Allsrue's, place where he works. I mean, he's an absolute beast, freak of nature. But the people that he has at Never Sate, right? And it's just amazing to see other people just pushing themselves and doing things they never thought they could possibly do, and that looks different for everybody.
Yes.
That could be somebody who's 65 who's been lazy and not really taking care of themselves, and end up participating in a pickleball tournament or something.
Oh, yeah.
Right? I mean, something they never dreamed they could do physically again and move around. But we're also capable if we just are willing to, put ourselves out there, give ourselves credit. And, it's so, you got to take those leaps of faith in life, because life's far too short just to sit home on the sofa and just watch it go by. You got to participate in it a little bit. So you've been just a joy, obviously, to have on the show, and so looking forward to having you back as a regular guest and host. And I know you have a guest list that's just absolutely phenomenal. So I can't wait to see some of the conversations you're going to be having in 2025. And share more of your story and some of the people that are a big part of your story. So thank you, Joe. And thank you so much, Matt, for being on today's episode. We appreciate you being able to, because you're such a big part of Joe's life, obviously. So it makes perfect sense, especially the last couple years there. So thank you both.
Thank you. Glad
Thank
to join.
you. This was amazing. It feels like Christmas came early.
Well, the good thing is this will release just, a little bit before Christmas. I'm trying to actually think as we're recording now, when will this release? I'm just looking at the calendar. Actually, this will release just before Thanksgiving, which is pretty awesome.
Wow.
Oh.
I think I moved it ahead of some other episodes, so that's nice.
Oh.
So, yeah. And by the way, I didn't thank you for your shirt today. Way to represent.
Oh, I love Critical Bench and Strong by Design.
Probably time for you to get a new package. I'll make a note here.
It really is Christmas.
It really is. Well,
Thank you, Santa.
I got to send you and Matt a swag pack.
Oh.
Swag pack to Millers. Okay, so that you guys can get some new duds or something, hats, whatever. We'll come up with something fun for you. So it's been a real joy. Thank you both for being on the show again, and thank you listeners for tuning in on the Strong by Design podcast. Hope today's conversation inspired you to think big, to love yourself, to find that joy, find that laughter, find that love in your life that you need to really be stronger in body and mind and spirit. It's so very powerful, and it'll really open the floodgates probably of true health in your life if you're able to tap into that, because God has already designed you in a way where that healing is it's inside you already. You just have to kind of unleash it. So we thank you again for tuning in, for sharing this episode with friends and family. Every Wednesday we drop a new episode here on Strong by Design. So we'll see you again next week. God bless you. Thank you so much for listening to the Strong by Design podcast. If you found value in today's episode, please subscribe so that more people can find out about our show. Plus, you don't want to miss any future episodes with the amazing guests and topics we have lined up for you.